Welcome back to week 3 of the fantasy football season, where 10 quarterbacks threw for more than 300 yards last week, and points were plentiful. Of course, then injury struck, and people got signed, and people got traded, and the whole world of fantasy is in disarray. So we have some major injuries to discuss. We have more knucklehead coaches to discuss. We have to talk about how poor Dutton has the most points in our league and is 0-2 and in dead last. But before we get to all that, I'm your co-host, Wayne Cavani, and joining me, as always, are the Janet and Cindy to my Jack Tripper. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Fiamano and Mike Dutton. Buongiorno, boys. Welcome back. Dutton, how are you?
I'm fine with my 0-2 team that puts up tremendous amounts of points every week, but somehow plays the team that scores the most points every week.
But you want to know what? In true credit to you, that's been your life.
Forever, right? I'm a great drafter and an unlucky scheduler.
For our listeners, as you know, we've told you this all started because we've been in a league for 27 years, and we started doing this as our league's called the Nitro League, and it was just solely a Nitro League podcast. Dutton is still top 3 in a single season scoring all time, and that was before we had flex or PPR. That's how good a team this guy puts together, and he never wins. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Scheduling nightmares every year.
And joining us from New York, where the Giants pulled out a win after it looked like they weren't going to, is FanDuel Fee. Chris Fiamano, how are you?
I'm doing great. I had a much better fantasy week this past week, which is surprising considering all the injuries. And my Giants pulled out a big win. I wouldn't, bet on them this week, but I'll take a win.
Well, you hold on those locks of the week, because it's before we get to the locks of the week, we got to start with buy it or bullshit. We got a lot to get to this week, gentlemen. The first question, Dutton, we're going to start with you. Preseason. We are seeing it take a lot longer for major stars to get going and their teams to be in sync. You look at the draft capital spent on a team like the Bengals, where you have to draft Jamar Chase, where you have to draft Joe Burrow, where you even have to draft Joe Mixon and T. Higgins, and they haven't performed. Has the way the preseason, the 3 weeks changed? I'll say the newer preseason model, has that completely messed up fantasy football? Buy it or BS, Dutton. Preseason has messed up fantasy football.
I'm buying it. You gave an example that's a good example, but also a bad example because of Joe Burrow's injury. But it's a good example in the fact that you look at other teams and there are struggles as well, right? Teams are not performing. I think this week we will start to see teams actually show us what they are, right? I mean, you're 3 weeks in, you've had full practices. But yes, the preseason has messed up anybody's ability to not so much draft a fantasy football team, but expect that fantasy football team to be good until week 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. It's like the second half of last week, Daniel Jones is a good example.
Right.
Like we finally saw the Giants like, okay, we remember now how to play football.
And then Saquon got hurt.
Fee, what do you think? Buy it or BS? The new preseason messes everything up for all us fantasy Joes.
I am absolutely buying it. And until a team decides to play their guys, like all their starters, for at least the 3rd or 4th week of the preseason without worrying about, quote unquote injuries, I think we're going to have this problem, every year going forward, until the team figures out that if they play all their starters and they play a whole game to get their, stamina, up and get that actual game, playing, so that way you're used to it. I think that they're gonna, have problems. And like you said, the Bengals are a prime example. Yes, Burrow has that injury, and I think that's part of the problem. He didn't play at all, and so he, for the first couple of weeks, he's been off. Not to mention he re-injured that calf.
Yeah.
But I also have Jamar Chase in 3 season-long leagues, and I'm getting killed because of it. So
yeah,
it's a big problem.
And what you're saying, Fee, like the gameplay situations. We remember Dutton nailed this last year when we talked about Deshaun Watson, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's fine. Watson's been practicing with the team," and Dutton said he's going to be underthrowing everybody because practice is not 5 guys rushing you in your face, and that's what we're seeing here. These guys execute beautifully. Joe Burrow, whoever it is, Kirk Cousins, they have the red shirt on in practice. They're not
Right.
getting the same pass rush that
Right.
you're seeing here.
And they're not coming at him at full speed because they don't
Right.
want to bump into him by accident.
Yes. 5 points of each of you. That is the correct answer. Fee, we'll start with you. They put the blame on the OC in San Diego last year, and they brought in Kellen Moore to change things, and they still look rusty. It could be the effect of the preseason that we're talking about, but these guys kind of, in Los Angeles, these guys kind of played together in the preseason. Buy it or BS, Fee. It's time for Brandon Staley to go.
I'm buying it. There's a common denominator from last season to this season with the Chargers and their offense, and it's Brandon Staley. He can't figure out how to get the Chargers on the right track with all the weapons they have on offense, and including their defense. They have some stars on defense, and they still can't stop anybody.
Yeah.
So it's not just an offensive problem; it's a defensive problem, which means it's an entire team problem, which comes right back to, of course, Brandon Staley. Something's got to give, and I think it needs to be their head coach.
Yeah, Dutton, I see your answer, and I kind of agree with you.
Yeah, like I said in the chat, in our spreadsheet, I said, why did it happen? He shouldn't have got on the plane. Like, I'm sorry. Like, they sacked Ryan Tannehill 5 times. Derrick Henry did not rush for 100 yards.
He looked awful.
Herbert threw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, and they lost the game. Like, yeah, Brandon Staley has to go. Like, it's time. Like, I don't know why it's taking so long. The Chargers have a team that should be way better than their record is, and it's not talent, it's coaching.
Yeah, 5 points each. I mean, it's hard to argue. It's just the Fee, what you said, there's too much talent, and Dutton, what you said, I don't think they have a good defense, but kind of what Fee said, they have great defensive players at certain positions that it's enough that you're going to, with that offense, you're going to win ball games. And they haven't had to do that, right?
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Obviously, the Cam Akers news, when I posed this question, hadn't hit yet. We'll talk about Cam Akers in a minute. But we had 2 starting running backs this week in Zach Moss and Kyron Williams that performed well and look like they're going to at least have the starting role to themselves for a couple weeks until other pieces get acclimated. Dutton, buy it or BS, you trust Kyron Williams more than Zach Moss right now?
I buy it that I trust Kyron Williams, and it's not the play of Zach Moss. It's the fact that Jonathan Taylor worries me, right? If he comes back, what happens to Zach Moss? And prior to Cam Akers being traded this afternoon, Kyron Williams was already the number 1 back in LA, right? So I don't think that changes anything. If anything, it makes it better, right? Because now they're like, you know what? We don't even have to worry about splitting time here.
Yeah.
You're our featured back, and we have a couple of backups that'll come in and spell you every now and then. So it's nothing against Zach Moss. I just think Kyron Williams' situation is better.
Pete.
Yeah, I agree with everything Dutton said. I'm buying it. Kyron Williams is in a better situation for sure than Zach Moss. I was going to mention Jonathan Taylor. That whole thing scares me when he comes back. I'm not sure how he'll fit in there, because he's upset about everything and he's still coming off injury. So, I don't know how that's going to all work out, but Kyron Williams, doesn't have anybody to battle with him for the starting job anymore now that Cam Akers is gone. By the way, he's getting 90% of the volume in that backfield for what seems to be a rejuvenated Rams team. So yeah, I'm buying Kyron Williams better than Zach Moss for sure.
2 points of contention for you, gentlemen, to play devil's advocate. First, what happens if Jonathan Taylor's traded before he comes back?
That's a good question.
I almost said Zach Morris.
Zach Morris.
Zach
and the Zach
Moss.
attack.
Deion Jackson is not good at football.
No.
There's really nobody else there, right? And then my other side of the coin is, if you've noticed, Fee, you mentioned the 90% of the volume for Kyron Williams. He's not putting up big yardage numbers, even with that volume. So
no, it's the goal line touches that are helping his fantasy value.
So he's kind of touchdown dependent. Let's say Jonathan Taylor's traded. Does that shift your focus that Zach Moss would become feature back in Indianapolis, or do you still think that offense in Los Angeles is better?
No, I think if Jonathan Taylor's traded, then Zach Moss. I don't know if he becomes the featured back. I don't know if the Colts would have a featured back, right? I feel like it'd be a 1A, 1B combo kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I would take Zach Moss at 1A over what's his face that you said is terrible, because I agree with you.
Yes.
Here's what I'm gonna say. As long as Anthony Richardson is healthy and playing, then I'll take Zach Moss over Kyron Williams if Jonathan Taylor gets traded, because I think that he'll have more fantasy value with Anthony Richardson, helping him out, with all the running that he does. It turns into that Eagles offense, that RPO offense, where you don't know if Richardson's going to carry, you don't know if the running back is going to carry, and it opens up all sorts of holes. Miles Sanders had a great year last year because Jalen Hurts was opening up holes for him. And I think the same type of thing will happen in Indianapolis as long as Anthony Richardson is healthy. Now, he's been hurt twice in 2 weeks. So it's kind of hard to say long term.
And one of them was a concussion. Don't mess with
right.
those.
It's kind of hard to say long term how that whole thing is going to play out. So it's tough to say which one, is in a better situation. Kyron Williams, like I said, he's getting a ton of volume. There's no one really there to push him, push him out of that spot. And the Rams look good on offense. And you can't discount McVay, putting him in good situations. So it's kind of a tough call, but I'd say it really dependent on Anthony Richardson's health.
That's fair. Moving on, we saw a terrible injury to Nick Chubb this week. And then, you look back and it's pretty much the same injury as 2015 when he was at Georgia. We saw Aaron Rodgers go down, and it was an injury that people come back from. There's no injury that's a good injury, but people come back from them. But do they come back from it at 41? So buy it or BS fee to you first. We have seen the last of both Aaron Rodgers and Nick Chubb. Fee.
I am saying that's BS because, it's BS to one and I'm buying it for the other. I'm saying it's BS to Aaron Rodgers because when it first happened, I was definitely on the record saying I think he's still going to come back. And then it turns out he, from everything that he's saying, he still wants to come back himself.
Because Aaron always tells the truth.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But I actually believe that he doesn't want to go out this way. And I think that he knows that he has a good team with the Jets. And I don't think he'll come back this year. I think that's kind of ridiculous, even with all the new technology that he's going to do with, the surgery and everything else with this. But I think he'll come back next year and try to give it a go again and see how it goes. As far as Nick Chubb goes, if it's too bad, first of all, the injury, itself is terrible, and it's too bad, that he got it. But the fact that it's the same knee that he mangled at Georgia, and that he's gonna that this basically the same thing just happened again to the same exact knee, I would find it hard to believe he would be anything close to even 60 to 70% of what he is now. And I don't think that that's good enough to be, lock you into an NFL team. So I got to say that I think that his career is probably over.
Dutton?
Same answer as Fee. Aaron Rodgers' ego will not allow him to go out like that.
That's fair.
Nick Chubb, I feel bad for. I do. It's just and I didn't even know it was the same knee until later on Monday night. But when it happened, I was watching it with my oldest daughter, and I was like, he is not playing football again as a running back. And I didn't even know it was the same knee until later on. That's bad. Yeah. With Aaron Rodgers, really quick, I'm just going to say this. It makes me laugh that Mr. Anti-Science, anti-everything is now relying on science to come back to play for the playoffs this year. And I'm just going to leave it at that, and we will move on.
Yeah. Puka Nacua. Dutton, is he for real, or is he FanDuel Fee Fool's Gold?
No, he is for real, because targets. I mean, he has become Matthew Stafford's. I don't even think Matthew Stafford looks at anybody else. Right. I think he just looks for him and throws him the ball.
Well, I mean, if you remember, trust me, I'm not putting him on the same level, but that
No,
was
it's the same thing. It's the
right?
exact same thing,
It was
Wayne.
Cooper
Yep.
Kupp. It didn't matter who they got Allen Robinson. It's
Doesn't
gonna
matter. Robert Woods didn't
no,
matter.
he's just looking. Matt Stafford has Calvin Johnson. Matthew Stafford has always been my top guy. Is my guy,
Right. And I'm going to throw it to him as many times as I can until you stop it.
Fee.
Yeah, no, he is for real. And he has to be, because you don't get that kind of usage and volume if you're not good.
Mhm.
He has to be able to get open. Stafford has to be able to find him. He has to be able to catch the ball so he's not dropping it. Listen, the guy's good, and I think that's just the bottom line.
And it's interesting because if you remember last week, Jordan said he got the 15 targets the first week, and we went back and watched. It was only like 3 unique targets to him. It could have been any player that was playing the receiver he was
Right. Right.
But I guess because he came through for Matthew Stafford
on all those.
Right. He's like, okay, let's do it again. And they did it again. And I don't see any reason why it would stop this week. So yeah, I think you guys pretty much nailed everything together. I was looking at who the Rams are playing this week. Aren't they playing Monday night against the Bengals, right?
Yeah,
They're playing
yes,
Monday
they
night
are.
against the Bengals.
Yeah. A
So
Bengals team that is weak right now.
or could it be that, like we're saying, week 3 is finally when everything comes together and this
Right.
turns into a complete shootout?
Right.
Means Puka Nacua would be Puka Nacua once again.
He'd have 30 targets.
At Cincinnati, who, their defense is no great shakes. So
yeah, right. All right. So you guys both tied. Good job. I didn't have time to form this into a buy it or BS question, but obviously with the undergoings today, we have to talk about both these. We talked about the Nick Chubb injury. Let's start there. Cleveland signed Kareem Hunt. Dutton, what do you think? Where he's coming into an offense he knows, but he's kind of going into an offense that kind of abandoned him last year, right?
I was about to say, like, you're going outside and looking for that like old lawnmower, like, hey, does this still work? I need you back, right? I need one more cut with you and then I can toss you aside again, right? Like, I mean, I feel bad for Nick Chubb, but at the same time, he's also going to a situation where their quarterback is terrible.
Oof.
He is so bad. And so, like, yeah, I don't think this is going to look good for Kareem Hunt. I don't and it's not his fault. Like, he's going to wait, like
Jerome Ford's show back there, and Kareem Hunt's just going to work his way in and maybe
be like, every now and then fill in for him, because there's a reason nobody else has signed Kareem Hunt, right? There's a reason Kareem Hunt was available for the Browns to re-sign.
Yeah, that's fair. Fee, what do you think?
I agree with everything Dutton said. I think that Kareem Hunt, I think it's Jerome Ford's show. And listen, Kareem Hunt decided to sign. He didn't have to, but he wanted to take that $4 million that the Browns were offering him. And I guess, because he knows the system already, it's, got to be a pretty easy thing for him to just fall right in.
Yeah.
So he probably figures why not, and he wasn't getting picked up anywhere else. So I don't think the whole like, oh well, we tossed you aside and now we want you back is a big deal. But I think it's Jerome Ford's show, and he'll basically have the same job that he had backing up Nick Chubb, and he'll fill in, he'll be some third down stuff, the occasional series or two here or there. But I think it's still Jerome Ford's show.
So we're all in agreement that this obviously Jerome Ford's not rostered in many leagues. He is in deeper leagues, but in 10-team leagues or not deep leagues. So we all agree though that Jerome Ford's the guy to go get, and if you can't get him, then go after Kareem Hunt, but your target should be Jerome Ford. I think that's what I think, at least.
Yeah, I mean,
I would agree. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to Cam Akers. We ran 2 weeks into the season. We ran into the same situation that we ran into last year. The Rams wanted to trade him. They couldn't trade him last year. This week they got a taker in Minnesota. What does that say about Alexander Mattison? What do we think there, fellas? Like, how much of a dent does Cam Akers make? I don't know about this week. It's a completely new offense. But let me say this. Cam Akers is a running back, and he knows how to run the football. They're playing the Chargers, the Vikings and the Chargers. That game's probably going to have about 85 points, right? Like it's going to be. So there is a chance that he could get into that game and be effective. What do we think? Let's start with Alexander Madison. Fee, what do you think this says the Vikings think about Alexander Madison?
This is a huge blow to Alexander Madison. It was clear, and to be fair, I feel like you mentioned it, before in our preview show, that or even years past, that Alexander Madison just isn't good enough. And every time he had the chance when Dalvin Cook got hurt, he would just be
Right.
He never really took the reins and ran with it. He was good a couple of times, but like nothing crazy or consistent. And Minnesota obviously feels the same way because they went out and picked up traded for an actual running back because they believe that Alexander Madison isn't getting the job done. And we all see it, the first 2 weeks of the season, he just hasn't been able to get the job done. And this is a huge blow to Alexander Madison and his fantasy owners, which I am one. But Cam Akers, I think, is going to come in, and like you said, I think it may not be a full complement this week,
Sure,
because he's got to get acclimated to the offense. But I think going forward, and as the season wears on, you'll see that Cam Akers is going to take over the starting job in Minnesota.
Fee, I mean Dutton, you are Fee. Dutton.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Fee on the whole Alexander Madison thing. Like, he's never been that guy, right? He's a great complimentary back, but he's not the back.
Yeah.
The problem is now you have Cam Akers, who, has a Super Bowl ring with the Rams, but he's not really the guy back either. He's a complimentary back, right? I feel like. So now you have two complimentary backs instead of the guy back.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I don't know what it means. I think what it means is that if you have Kirk Cousins as your quarterback, you should play him a lot because I think he's going to throw the ball 60 times.
Yeah. I mean, they always say, he just needs a change of scenery. You've heard that before. Maybe that's it. Cam Akers. Maybe Cam Akers becomes a lead back. He's in the right offense to have opportunity, right? Like this is a team that's going to score points every week. They're going to need a running back. And maybe it makes Madison better because he isn't that lead back. Of course, he's not going to put up the fantasy points that people drafted him as. People drafted him as an RB1, like he'd be a fantasy RB2, but he'd be a real life lead back. He's not going to get those points, but maybe he's more productive going back into that complimentary role and actually getting you some points as opposed to whatever the hell he's been doing the past 2 weeks. So obviously those were two big moves. A lot of people are going to be trying to trade or pick up Kareem Hunt on waiver wires this week. So I felt like we had to discuss them. And I think we did a service to our loyal listeners by giving our opinions on them, which are 98% of the time correct. Anyway, moving on to locks of the week, gentlemen. We said we would ride the Lions until they lost, and I feel like it was the first time in 3 years we picked the Lions and they lost. And
they did it, man. They let us down.
It's the first time in a long time they didn't come through. I mean, that offense still erupted. They couldn't close it out. So on the season, our 3-and-out picks are now 1-1. Dutton is 0-2. I'm 1-1, and Fee is 2-0. So there's a lot of big spreads this week. If you looked at it, it was a crazy spreads week. So I'm gonna let Fee. You are the expert. You are undefeated. So we're gonna start with you. Who is your Jameson Williams lock of the week?
My lock of the week is the Tennessee Titans. They are +3 playing against Cleveland. And we just spoke about how, they lost Nick Chubb, how Deshaun Watson is terrible. It doesn't matter to me that they're playing at home. But Tennessee, I like Vrabel, and I think he keeps them in this game no matter what. So whether it's a close game or whether Tennessee wins outright, I'm going to take Tennessee plus the 3 points.
Okay. Dutton.
I'm taking the Seahawks -6 against the Panthers. I live in North Carolina. We had to watch the Panthers the other night. I don't think the Panthers offense is very good.
No.
I don't think Bryce Young is very good right now as a quarterback. I don't want to knock on him as a rookie. we're supposed to give him some time and space down here, but his offensive line gives him no time. So, yeah, I'm taking the Seahawks -6.
I have two picks I really, really like this week. One is the Steelers giving a 1.5 to the Raiders. That is Sunday Night Football. And I think we saw it. Sorry, Dutton, but the Steelers defense is very good. And I think they're going to be in Jimmy G's face all night long. But I also like the Pats giving 2.5 to the Jets. If this was Aaron Rodgers in there, I don't, obviously the line would be much different, but the Pats played the Eagles on opening weekend and lost by 5. They played the Dolphins last week and lost by a touchdown. This is a team that's hanging with the big guns on offense, and the Jets are not big guns on offense. So I'm kind of torn which one I like. I think I'm going to go the Steelers giving a 1.5 to the Raiders, but I do really like the Patriots. I just don't see the Raiders. Josh Jacobs hasn't looked like, obviously he missed most of the preseason. He hasn't looked right yet.
Aaron Rodgers had more yards than Josh Jacobs last week because Josh Jacobs rushed for -2 yards.
Yeah, there you go. So I just really like the Steelers defense last week.
Two things. Number one, I think you should have went with the Patriots because I completely agree with that pick. And number two is, if you're betting tomorrow night, this is Wednesday that we're recording the show. If you're betting tomorrow night, I know that you're supposed to take double-digit dogs and take the points. Don't do it. Take San Francisco minus the 10.5.
Wow.
There's no chance that the Giants are even going to come close to this game. We also saw them make that crazy comeback, but this is the San Francisco 49ers,
right,
and the Giants are not a good team. And no Saquon Barkley. So take San Francisco minus the 10.5. Trust me.
So who we want to lock in as our pick of the week?
I kind of like the Patriots pick too. Fiamano said it. I kind of like it.
We could go Patriots. All right, Patriots 2.5 over the Jets. That's our 3 and out. Jamison Williams lock of the week. That brings us to FanDuel Fees Stacks of the week. Once again, I took a FanDuel Fee Stack from the show. I put it in the Mega Millions or whatever that thing is called, and I cashed. So,
did you? Nice.
I mean, I didn't win. I don't have $1 million. You guys wouldn't see me here talking to you right now if I not gonna lie to you. But I did cash, and as long as I keep doing that, that's a win for FanDuel Fee. So
yeah, it is
for us this week.
All right. So my 3 stacks that I like this week are number one, I'm going with, so the Chargers Vikings game has the highest over under this week, which is only at 51.5, surprisingly.
That's our lock of the week right there. Over.
So you can go either way with this one. You can take Justin Herbert with Keenan Allen and throw in maybe a little even Josh Kelly and come back with Justin Jefferson, or you can go the other way. You can take Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson and come back with Keenan Allen or even Mike Williams. Either way, both of those stacks are right around the same amount of money. They're both around 26,000, taking up, that much salary, because Justin Jefferson is one of the highest salaried receivers, and Justin Herbert is like a top four, salaried quarterback. So either way, you're going to pay up for either one of those stacks, but either one could totally, put you in the money. My favorite stack this week, I'll give you number 2, is Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley playing against Houston. I know that your Houston Texans defense has been a lot better this year, and Houston.
So has the offense,
and so has the offense. But I like the Jaguars to kind of bounce back this week. And Trevor Lawrence is only 7,600. Calvin Ridley only 7,500. And you can even bring it back with Nico Collins, who's been fantastic for Houston. He's down at 6,900. I think that would be a great stack and comeback if you wanted to throw in Nico Collins in that too. So I really like Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars this week.
Can I interject real quick? If I know it's the next segment, but if you both remember, last week I said your start of the week at wide receiver was Robert Woods, but Nico Collins would get the touchdown, and that's exactly what happened. Yep. both. Nico Collins had a monster game.
He did.
But I mean, Robert Woods got you 15 points, I think it was, in a PPR league, and it's just CJ Stroud can throw the ball. I underestimated him, and it's just really fun to be a Texans fan, even though they're probably going to win 2 games this year, but it's at least fun losing. Like it hasn't been fun losing in a long time. So anyway, back to you, Fee.
You're competitive.
Yes.
Yeah, they're competitive. It's Houston, they give you fantasy points, which is good. So and my last stack of the week, I like the Cowboys playing against Arizona. I know that we think that what most likely is going to happen is the Cowboys defense is just going to smother Arizona's offense and turn them into nothing, and they're just going to run the ball all game long. But I think this could be a breakout game for Dak. And if that's the case, and I feel like they can use this game to get him going. And he's 7,600. You compare him with CeeDee Lamb, who's obviously their number one receiver. He's up at 8,500, but I like that stack a lot going up against Arizona, who's terrible.
Do you have any single plays that you really like this week?
Single plays, I don't know because I didn't really put one together.
Gotcha.
But let me just take a real quick.
Yeah, I'll put you on the spot. See,
let me take a real quick peek. How is Atlanta's defense? They're playing Detroit this week.
they could be good. They're one of those teams that has good players.
Right.
So Amon-Ra St. Brown is a little dinged up.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like Josh Reynolds. He's a little expensive for who he is at 7K. But if Amon-Ra isn't the same, they're gonna have to go somewhere else. And I think that somewhere else is Josh Reynolds. And also, not to mention Montgomery is out this week as well. Obviously, Gibbs is going to take his place, and he'll probably be very good. But I think they're going to still have to throw the ball, and they're going to have to throw it to someone. And Josh Reynolds, I think, is that guy.
Yeah, I like that. I could be on board with that. All right, so let's move on to let's brag on ourselves for a little bit because we absolutely crushed our starts and sits last week. We went 4 for 4 in starts. We told you to start Jared Goff. We told you to start James Cook. We told you to start Zay Flowers, and we told you to start Sam Laporta.
Ooh, I like Sam.
We did get burned. We went with the start of Dak against the Jets. Of course, the Jets their defense broke down by the time they were just too gassed to even stay because there was no offense. But we told you whatever Green Bay running back wasn't going to be a good one. It turned out that was right. We told you we'll get to him. We told you Kyle Pitts. We did say to sit Garrett Wilson, and if he didn't run 58 yards by himself on a 8-yard slant, we would have been right. But he did.
Didn't he only have 2 catches?
He had 2 catches. Yep, and one and he did most of the work on the other. So since we're doing if you remember the week before, we went 4 for 4 on our sits. We knocked all our sits. We struggled. We went 2 for 4 on the start. So we're doing really well this year. So let's keep that ball rolling. Dutton, we'll start with you at quarterback this week. Who are you starting?
Femano just talked about it, and I agree. I'm starting Dak against the Cardinals. I really think it is the get Dak going game. So I agree with you, Fee.
Nice. I talked about him in the stacks. I'm starting Trevor Lawrence against Houston.
This is probably Captain Obvious at this point, especially when he said that he thinks that this man will throw 60 times a game, but I wanted to put him in here because I want to say I think Kirk Cousins is the number 1 scoring quarterback in fantasy this week. So I think that's why you got to start him. I want to be on record saying I think he has pretty much close to a 45, 50-point week, depending on your format. Obviously,
wow,
formats will be different, but I think no matter what your format is, he's the top scoring quarterback.
Better throw for 500 yards.
What do you think? We sat Dak was our sit last week, so why don't we give him some love and make him our start this week if you guys are good with that?
I like it.
I like it.
Let's go to running back. This is starts again. Fee, we'll start with you this time. I like it because I can't stand this guy on my team, so I'm hoping you're right.
I want to start Isaiah Pacheco. They're playing the Bears. The Bears have been an absolute disaster on both sides of the ball. And Kansas City, yes, they got Travis Kelce back, but they don't really have a whole lot past that. We saw, their receivers, there's a whole bunch of them, and you never know what you're going to get. Jerick McKinnon has been absent from this offense. So it's really, Pacheco and CEH lately. But I like Pacheco to kind of get going, especially against a terrible Bears defense.
We have to take an aside here because you saw that the Bears defensive coordinator.
I was just going to say that. He quit.
He just quit. And it's there's been some weird reports out there, and I don't. None of them are from reliable sources, and I don't want to go down that road and even bring it up if they're not true. But the point of the matter is, Chicago's a mess, and I want to point something else out. I did say that I felt he was being overdrafted, but Dutton has been anti-Justin Fields since opening kickoff, and I'm kind of turning on that train that if he can't run because this offensive line is that bad, if he can't run, this guy is not a fantasy football
He's
quarterback.
not, because he can't throw.
Right, he can't throw. That we've seen. And he's not getting the running game going like he was last year.
Right.
This is painful for people that made him a high pick as a quarterback, and a lot of people did. Anyway, back to our starts. Again, reminder, fee pick Pacheco. Dutton is picking
DAndre Swift against the Bucks. The Eagles have found something with that running game, and I think DAndre Swift will lead that running game. The Bucks are 2-0, but that's fool's gold. They played the Vikings, and they've played the Bears. So I'd like to see when they play a real team. So DAndre Swift.
I'm going to go with the guy that had -2 yards last week against a team that I said has a really good defense, because I refuse to believe that he's going to have -2 yards. Plus Jerome Ford, who pretty much, I could tell you a lot of people didn't even know who he was, ran for 100 yards against the Steelers. But the Steelers are still going to be a good defense. I still think they win that game. But anyway, I think Josh Jacobs has a nice bounce back game here. I don't know that he's going to be like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns or anything, but he's not going to be -2 yards. And I think you could start him with confidence. Who do we want to lock in? I'm biased because I want to lock in Pacheco just to put it into the universe that he finally.
All right, let's do it. We'll lock him in. Bears don't have a defensive coordinator. We'll lock him in.
Yeah. What's up with the Bucks defense? Then tell us about the Bucks defense.
They're I don't know. I can't tell you. Like, they should be good, right? But they're also banged up. Their secondary's always been questionable, and now they're going against, the Eagles. So that'll be interesting to watch.
Yep.
Their linebackers are strong. Their defensive line is solid. Like, it's just, they've played against a Kirk Cousins team that didn't know what they were doing, and then they played against the Bears. I mean, did you see Justin Fields? He threw a screen pass in the middle of the field at his own 1-yard line.
Yeah, he certainly helps defenses look good.
Yeah, exactly. I want to see what they look like against the Eagles.
Got it.
We'll move on to wide receiver. Zay Flowers is the real
He's
deal.
the guy. Why not?
He likes him. You got Mark Andrews back last week. Mark Andrews got a touchdown, but Zay Flowers was still heavily game planned in that offense. I still don't think Lamar Jackson, it's a new offensive coordinator. I don't think he's comfortable in that offense yet, and he's going to rely on the guy that's helping him out, and he could dink and turn into a 10-yard pass. So I like Zay Flowers. Done.
I like George Pickens against the Raiders. I think the Steelers finally found that, hey, if we can get him the ball, we can actually move the ball across the field and not get 3 and out for the first 5 plays or first 5 possessions, I mean. So, yeah, I think George Pickens, I think him and Kenny Pickett might have found something, assuming Kenny Pickett is not too banged up, but I like George Pickens.
And Fee.
I'm going with Jordan Addison this week just to stay involved with that Chargers Minnesota game where we believe that 80 points are going to be scored. Obviously Justin Jefferson is going to get his, and most likely TJ Hawkinson too. But I think Jordan Addison against this Chargers defense could be a big asset for Justin Herbert, not Justin Herbert, for Kirk Cousins. If he can kind of get him the ball. If he has a little bit of time against this Chargers defense, I think that Addison can put up some decent fantasy points this week.
And if Benny's listening, Benny likes when we say our name. We'll know if he listened this week, because Benny texted me today asking me what I thought about Addison, and I said he's a must start. So I'm glad to see, Fee, that you think so as well. Who do I honestly love all three of these guys. Who do we want to pencil in as the start of the week?
I like Addison. I think it's a good one. I think it's off the radar, kind of, right? Like, I mean, it's on the radar, but it's not on everybody's radar.
Sure. If you have Pickens, you're definitely starting him. I think Zay
Right.
Flowers is kind of at that point too.
Right.
So we go from a week where last week I said there was a bunch of good tight ends to play and they all played really well to back to reality. And I couldn't find a tight end I like. So Fee, why don't you start us off with one and tell us a tight end you like?
Okay, so I know we just spoke about how awful the Bears are and Justin Fields too. However, I feel like Cole Kmet can kind of get something going this week, especially because Justin Fields has no time to throw the ball. He's obviously not running it. And Cole Kmet could be that kind of dump off, pass that he needs to like get rid of the ball quick. And so I kind of like Cole Kmet this week going up against the Chiefs.
Dutton?
I like Evan Ingram and the explosive Jaguars offense inside the red zone. Texans will have a hard time guarding him.
They will. I'm going with the get right game for Freiermuth. It just didn't make sense. And I feel like the common theme in the 4 years of the show is if you're a tight end playing the Raiders, that's a good place to get right. They haven't been very good against the tight end already this year. It's 2 games. It's not really enough to judge, but I think, look, he's a great tight end. I think Kenny Pickett, sure, he's going to look Pickens all day, but they can coexist in that offense. And I like Freiermuth as a bounce back this week. What do we think? Who do we want to lock in? Evan Ingram is tough to sit against the Texans, but especially since you like Trevor as well, Fee. But
yeah, I do. Let's start Ingram. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
All right. So reviewing our starts of the week, the 3 and out starts of the week at quarterback are Dak Prescott, Isaiah Pacheco, Jordan Addison at wide receiver, and Evan Ingram at tight end. Let's move on to the sits. Dutton, we'll start with you.
Joe Burrow against the Rams. I don't even know if he's going to play. And if he plays, I still think he ends up leaving the game hurt and sitting out for a while after Monday night.
Possible. Fake.
Sit Daniel Jones. If you were thinking about starting him, don't.
Yeah. I'm going Geno Smith against the Panthers. Fee, I know you like them to win that game, but I'm going to tell you something. The Panthers have allowed 1 passing touchdown, and it was Bijan Robinson doing all the work on a screen pass from Ritter. Now, I know they played Derek Carr and Desmond Ritter. They haven't played, but is Geno Smith that much better than Ritter? Okay, I'll give you that. But is he that much better than Derek Carr? I don't know that yet. He's definitely got better weapons than I don't even know that he's got better weapons than Derek Carr because Olave's amazing. And Michael Thomas is looking a little bit more 80%-ish of the Michael Thomas we knew. I just don't think Geno. I think the Panthers are sneaky, but Shaq Thompson's also out this week. So I didn't know that when I put that in there, and then I was reading 4, and that guy screwed me. But I'm going to stick with my guns. I'm going to stick with that Panthers D. And I think it's Kenny Walker weekend. Kenneth Walker III. I think he's going to get a lot of run. So how do you not lock in Daniel Jones against the Niners?
You have to. I mean, he has no Saquon.
And he's a starter, right? Like he is
right.
He is a starter in leagues. Running back, Fee, we'll start with you.
I'm sitting Najee Harris against the Raiders, and it's because he just has not looked not like the Najee Harris that we've seen him be the last couple of years. And Jaylen Warren has really kind of taken over like a split in that backfield. So it's like really running back by committee now. So I don't know how you can keep starting Najee. So I'm sitting him.
Dutton.
Yeah, I agree with everything Fee said. It'd be interesting to be in that running back room this week, right? I mean, there's got to be some tension going on in there. So I'm looking over the shoulders.
Let's not forget Najee Harris has had almost 700 touches because he's a receiving back in his first 2 years. That is a ton of money.
Right. It's catching up to him.
Yeah.
I'm sitting, my next 2 are going to be very similar for running back and wide receiver. I'm sitting Rachaad White against the Eagles. That defensive line is a monster of the Eagles, and the Bucs really can't get a lot going with the run, and I don't think they get a lot going this week.
I'm sitting James Conner because if you haven't watched the Dallas defense, you really should. And is not going to have time to breathe back there. So I don't think James Conner gets anything done. Who do we want to sit? I kind of agree with all these. I'll go Najee.
I was gonna sit Najee. Yeah, that's the one. Because you would think he'd be starting in a lot of leagues, and he's just not delivering.
Yeah. Dutton, we'll start with you on wide receiver because it's one of your boys again.
Yeah, Chris Godwin against the Eagles. I'm telling you, until the Bucks prove to me they can beat a winning team, I'm sitting some Bucks against a solid team in the Eagles.
What do you think about Mike Evans? You think obviously he's not going to do what he did last week?
No, he's. I mean, I think he's Baker's target if they get in the red zone, and that's why I think it's hard for Chris Godwin because he doesn't become a target in the red zone, right? It's Chris Godwin is the 20 to 20 guy, like throw him the 8-yard and hope he gets 15 to 20 yards. So
is Mike Evans the quietest Hall of Famer we've ever watched play?
Yes.
Right. I mean,
he's a first balloter too. Like,
right. By the end of this year, he's likely going to be
tied with Jerry Rice for most 1,000-yard receiving seasons in a row.
Yeah. And he's got a Super Bowl ring, right? Yeah.
Yep.
It's amazing. It's the quietest Hall of Fame career we've ever seen.
Played his entire career at one team.
Yeah. Well, so far. We'll see.
Right. We'll see how this ends. Right.
Fee.
All right, so I originally had someone in here. It was Mike Williams, but obviously I think I'm going to change that because I don't really agree with that after everything that we spoke about that game. So I'm going to change that, and I'm going to say Garrett Wilson. I mean, he's obviously a starter on most lineups, but I'm not sure you can really start him with any confidence this week, especially playing the Patriots, who are a top 5 defense. And obviously with the whole Zach Wilson, throwing them the ball. And I know he came through last week, but he only had 2 catches.
He did all the work.
And yes, they were big catches, and they got him the fantasy points you needed. But I don't think he's going to do that again this week. I think.
And the Patriots took away Tyreek, right?
Yeah, they sure
Even though the Dolphins won that game, Tyreek had a very quiet game Sunday night.
Yeah. I'm going to say Michael Thomas. Dutton's talked about the Packers defense a lot this year. They are opportunistic. I don't think the Packers don't allow 2 wide receivers to have a day. I think they're gonna pick their battles, and if they could shut down Michael Thomas, Olave is going to be Olave. So you got to take Thomas out of this game, and I think that's what they focus on. Who do we want to sit?
I like the Wilson pick to be bold.
Okay, let's sit.
It could bite us, but you know what? If Wilson ends up with like 10 points, we're going to be like, told you.
Yep.
I said last week I'm starting Kyle Pitts every week until he tells me not to, and he did not tell me to start him this week. So I'm keeping Kyle Pitts on the bench at tight end. Fee.
I'm sitting Dallas Goedert this week. Dutton talked about how the Buccaneers, they actually have a decent defense. They have good linebackers, and the Eagles have weapons all over the place, and Goddard hasn't really been getting it done.
Yeah.
And I think that it stays the same this week against the Bucs D.
Dutton.
I'm sitting Zach Ertz against the Cowboys because there's a good chance that Micah Parsons has more points as a tight end this week than Zach Ertz.
I mean, guys, I'm going to say Kyle Pitts again.
I agree. He's
that's fine.
Highest. He is the highest drafted blocking tight end in the history of the NFL.
We may have to change the name to the Kyle Pitts sit at tight end of the week and just eliminate him from the conversation and just name the award after him. Kyle Pitts sit of the week at tight end. So reviewing the 3 and out locks of the week, we got Danny Dimes at quarterback, Daniel Jones, Najee Smith at running back, Garrett
Harris.
Not Najee Smith.
Yeah, you said Najee Smith. It's Najee Harris.
Yeah, was there Najee Smith at one point? Was he a quarterback in college or something?
Yes.
No
idea. Yeah, Achilles Smith played for the Bengals.
Who was
Achilles Smith.
Yeah.
That's
I think he was.
Najee Harris, Garrett Wilson at wide receiver, and the Kyle Pitts sit at tight end of the week. This week, Kyle Pitts. Anything else to add, gentlemen, before we go?
No, good luck this week. Win all the money.
Luck.
Yeah, let's go out there. Let's win some games, and we'll see you next week on 3 and Out.